Hello, everybody. My name is Michael. Today's video is an update on the state of entropy. First thing I'd like to get out of the way, I'm working on setting up OBS, getting my microphone ready for all this. Because, like I said, I don't have any professional equipment yet. I've been doing research on what I should be buying. My plan is eventually to build a small studio out in the garage and, have more professional audio equipment and maybe one day hire actual professional voice actors and whatnot. But as I'm building up to that, it helps to use the equipment that I already have. And one thing I've been doing is playing around with OBS and the filters and trying to get the equipment I have now sounding the best that it possibly can. So let me know if this is a better change from the first video to this one. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get on to the update. My original intent was to release the first chapter of the first book. But as I started polishing that first chapter, even though it's good. It's a good introduction to the book. It's a good introduction to that story. It's not, in my opinion, all that interesting in the grand scheme of things. It's two people more or less just sitting there talking. So the story I've chosen is actually one that I wrote about 10 years ago, and it was about 3/4 of the way done, and I've taken it and I've polished it up and I actually completed it. And I had a lot of fun doing that because it was, like I said, it was one of the original stories. And so it was a lot of fun, like I said, to go back to it and kick it off and get it polished up for you guys. And in this story, like I said, it's actually it's very early in the lore, and it's about 7,000 years after the Exodus from Earth, and they're on a colony called Ladrana, and the story revolves around what's going on in the human civilization at this point, because the human civilization is fractured. It exists on dozens of different worlds. It's not linked to Earth anymore. A lot of people don't even care about Earth anymore. And there's some things going on, like I try to keep things simple in the story. So some of these names might just sound simple, and it's just because it's not because I can't think of names to call these guys. I just like the simplicity of it. Like the original colonies, there's like 6 or 7 of them. Once they left Earth, they colonized any planet that they could find outside of our solar system. And so those planets, and that is called the core or the inner worlds. And then a couple thousand years later, as they kept on exploring, they hit like this dead band in the galaxy where there's no rocky planets, or the planets are small, or they're not suitable for colonization. But then they find a group of planets that are very either easily converted, bioengineered to sustain human life, or they can easily already sustain it with some modifications to the environment with technology that they do have, with the abilities that they do have. And one of these planets they come across is called Ladrana, and these planets are known as the outer worlds. And what starts happening on the inner worlds, Earth starts to like, I guess you could say, almost try to assert its dominance again. Old attitudes, old country attitudes, whatnot. Trying to start, they got the one world government now on Earth, and that one world government doesn't see the rest of the colonies as independent. Kind of like, I guess you could say they're kind of like the British Empire or even the Roman Empire. They want to put them back under their heel and not necessarily explore them, but they want to kind of unify humanity again. They want a monoculture, the same language, the same, beliefs, the same traditions, that sort of thing. And now it's not necessarily, I would say, I guess you could call it an invading army from the inner worlds. They go out to these outer colonies because, like I said, they're about a year away from not just these colonies, but also Earth. So it's quite a fair distance. And if you know anything about history, the one thing that creates separate cultures and separate, languages and separate tribes and, different outlooks, different ideas, is distance, and time. Like if it takes you, if the average person, like, say 500 years ago didn't travel more than 10 miles from their house, it's likely that, even if they existed like in a country like, say, Britain, they probably never been anywhere, out, probably had never even been to London, let alone, halfway across the world to, say, America. And a lot of times when they left permanently. They never returned back home. And because back then it was a 3 month journey or 3 month or 6 month journey to get from England to the United States. So, that's kind of the inspiration for this idea, is that these are, this is the frontier. This is the, new exploration. And as the technology has gotten better and they've gotten, developed like faster than light travel and all that, that time gap has gone down, but it's still a year is a long time. And so these outer colony, so these inner colonies start wanting to try to exert their, again, I don't want to use the word dominance, but that's more or less what it is. And they don't call them an army. They don't even call it a military. They just call them like peace, peace emissaries or delegations. And what these delegations or emissaries are, they're sent to these outer worlds to get them to conform in whatever way possible, be it through, oppression or cooperation, well, however it works. Well, when they get to Ladrana's like I said, I hate to get political in my stories because, the world is so full of politics right now, and it's kind of crazy. And I want to give a reprieve to that, but to explain, everything evolves around politics. They say, I've heard people say that, culture's downstream from politics, or politics are downstream from culture, or something like that. And that's honestly true. If you watch, you learn history and you learn about those things. Those two things are kind of linked to one another. And if I had to take a guess, if I had to take a wild stab, I would say Ladrana, Mordecai, the people of Ladrana, his brother, his family, they all have more of like a libertarian view of the world versus a liberal or a conservative or a Republican even, or whatever, part of the spectrum you want to call it. They're more of like the libertarian, like the individual is, the prime thing, and they don't really subscribe to like, into collectivism or anything like that. And their world is set up like that. Like they don't have any government. Like they believe in self-governance. And if there is a need, like if there's a need of road, a temporary committee is formed, and the people that the road is going to benefit the most are the ones that pay for it, that sort of thing. And they get help, from the other areas and whatnot. But for the most part, it's very decentralized, I guess you can say, very self-governance and whatnot. And these delegates, these emissaries, they arrive on Ladrana, and they try, they shake things up. These are things that these people haven't experienced, and especially the original, like Mordecai and his brother, who are, first generation immortals. They haven't seen these things since they left Earth, 7,000 years before, and they're very resistant to it. And the way that they decide to deal with this problem is what actually fractures their own relationship and starts them down this path of divergence. Even though they both really agree on, they both agree on the same outcome, their ideas on how to get there are radically different from each other's. And there's even parts in the story in this story, I should say, where it almost seems like Mordecai's brother is actually working against Mordecai, and vice versa, that Mordecai is working against his brother. But they're actually both working towards the same end goal. They just have different ideas on how to achieve it. And this is the point where it cements in both of their minds that their way of life is worth fighting for, is worth preserving, and even possibly dying for it. And so that's how they move forward in the story. And like I said, by the time we get to the end of the story, their relationship starts becoming fractured. And plus, on top of that, we get to meet a lot of the characters that we probably won't meet again until much later on into the. I shouldn't say I do know, but I'm just saying a lot of them we don't get to meet again until much later on in probably the second book and near the end of the first book. And so it will be interesting to see these early on adaptations of these characters and then see their later or final forms in the books. So, like I said, I hope this story is something interesting to everybody and it gives a good idea what Entropy will be about. And look for that around August 18th. I do hope to have it done by the 18th because that's my birthday. And I think I said in the first video that I want it, this to be a gift to myself, a dream almost finally realized. And I know that sounds kind of probably narcissistic. I don't have a big head. I'm kind of arrogant sometimes, but I don't intend this to be an arrogance thing. This is more just something I want to do. It's something I need to do, something that I want to do for myself, that sort of thing. And anyway, but let me know how the filters are sounding. Another thing I'd like to do is more videos like this one that give more backstory, maybe explain why I've decided to go down certain routes, like the description about, like I do that inspiration, like the inspiration I drew from history from the British Empire, how, the time and distance thing and all that. Because there's a lot of that in the story, like, every good writer, or every writer, I shouldn't say every good writer, but every writer draws from some well, and we have many wells to draw from. We have personal experiences, we have things going on in current times, things that historical things. Like I had a teacher once tell us, and this is something that stuck with me. All the way from I want to say ninth grade. Yeah, ninth grade. She said, "History is the greatest story ever told," and it's kind of right because history is a story. Some people want to consider like concrete facts, like, this is the only way that it could have happened. But if you actually start looking into it, history has many facets. History is not a black and white thing. It's not clear cut, it's messy, it's very human. And sometimes you tell a story, you can tell a story any way you want from the events in history. You can make evil people sound noble and honorable, and vice versa, and that's the power of history. And to some, that's the dangers of history, because you could get revisionist. And I'm not exactly sure if I agree with the idea of what revisionist history actually is, because each generation, each culture, as we move along, we're going to have different values and possibly different outlooks on certain things than the previous generations before us. And especially if we're divided by hundreds of years, you look back at American society 250 years ago, and you kind of scratch your head, how did we get from there to here? I mean, there's some resemblances, don't get me wrong, but if you take that modern lens and you look back at history, you're definitely going to find things that, you're going to paint those things in certain lights that, maybe the history that you learned didn't. So every generation, every year, those stories are going to change. And it's all about in the interpretation of the events of days gone by through modern lenses. I'm sorry, I got a little bit rambly there. I didn't mean to. But yeah, so I think history is a great place to pull information, pull inspiration from. And then there's movies and television and, books and comics and, YouTube videos, the whole nine. It's all sources of inspiration, and, it's all how you weave your own narrative, I guess you can say, when it comes to your own story. So anyway, if you like to see more videos like this, I might even call it something like Entropy Diaries or something like that. I don't know. Let me know if you feel like it. And I hope to see you on the next video or August 18th, whichever comes first. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you soon.